What's going on, young people? Thanks for joining me for our second homework video of this unit. The unit is developmental psychology. In our last video, we talked about attachment, so relationships with your parent. In this video, we're going to be talking about cognitive development, okay? So that is the plan for today. So we're going to talk about three different theorists, kind of going to do an overview of development in general and these stage theories. Then we're going to talk about cognitive development, how the way our thinking changes over time. So when I talk about stage theories, sometimes they're called step theories. So some researchers believe that development is continuous. So this left graph is the idea of continuous development. The idea like gradual changes happen over time, one after the other. And there's not a huge difference day to day or week to week, okay? Motor development is a form of continuous development, right? Like you're able to support a little more weight. You're able to use scissors a little bit better, to use a writing utensil a little bit better, to walk a little bit faster, to jog, to run, continuous development. The theories that we'll be talking about in the next couple of days are called stage or step theories because there are very clear breaks in what people are capable of, okay? So today we're going to be talking about Piaget. We talk about Erikson and Freud and Maslow and Kohlberg over the next week or two. They all have discontinuous stage or step theories, okay? So how do these folks develop these theories, right? You can't see this, but these are all the different theories we'll be talking about. And by the end of this unit, you'll be able to fill out a chart like this all on your own because of the stuff we've talked about. So how do they develop these theories? Well, there's two types of studies, okay? Imagine I'm trying to find out at what age people are best at, I don't know, shooting free throws, okay? One type of study, I could pick a day where I get 5 and 15 and 25-year-olds and I have them all shoot 100 free throws. I just measure how they did, right? So all at once, at one time, I'm taking people from across different ages, 5 and 15 and 25 and 45 and 65-year-olds. And I can graph it and see at which age people are best at shooting free throws. Another type of study takes place over a long period of time. We've talked about these before, but a longitudinal study is when I take 5-year-olds maybe, and I have them shoot 100 free throws. And then in 10 years, I get those same folks to come back when they're 15, and I have them shoot free throws. And then when they're 25 and 35 and 45 and so on and so forth, and by the end of my study, I'll be able to have a really good graph of when this group of people, when they were best at shooting free throws. So two types of studies. Longitudinal studies are better, but they take more time, effort, and money. Whereas a cross-sectional study, the data is not as good. You can get it all at once, okay? So these researchers developed their theories by doing some cross-sectional studies, getting a bunch of people, a bunch of kids who are 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 and 10 and 12, all in a lab on one day and testing them. And they've also done some studies where they take kids who have just been born and they do research on them for 10, 12, 15 years to see what happens to them over time, okay? Cross-sectional study, 20, 50, 80-year-olds all at one time. Longitudinal study, get 20-year-olds and then talk to those same people when they're 50 and look at those same people when they're 80. These are the ways that we do research, okay? This is another way of looking at the same thing. So today's class is specifically about cognitive development, how our thinking changes over time. One second. How our thinking changes over time. So we're going to talk about three folks. You don't need to write their names down yet. Just write down the word thinking. Cognition, it's about your thinking. We're going to talk about three different researchers and their theories. So the first researcher, Jean Piaget. Jean, it was a guy. It's like John, but he was Swiss. Okay, we talked about him previously when we talked about cognition before the break. So these words were some of his terms for how our thinking changes over time. We develop new schemas, a way of thinking about things. Little kids sometimes assimilate. They try to use the words and schemas they have to describe new objects, and sometimes they end up looking a little bit stupid. But then they can accommodate. They can develop new schemas and change their schemas when they come in contact with a new idea. Okay? So these terms are all about how your thinking changes over time. We associate them with Jean Piaget. All right. This is mostly a review. Let's talk about some new stuff from Piaget. Okay, we're already on Roman numeral 5. All right. So some new stuff. He said that there are 4 stages of development, 4 ways that you can think about the world. The mnemonic, SPCF, represents the 4 stages. Okay, and we'll write some things about them in a second. You'll need to write down all these words. Maybe write down SPCF for now. And I have 2 mnemonics for you. Smart preschoolers cook fish, SPCF. Or maybe you prefer some people can fly, SPCF. Whichever one you prefer, just have a little sentence to remember the order of Piaget's 4 stages. Let's go through them all. The first one, the S, stands for the sensory motor. Sensory motor stage is when all you think about is the stuff that you can sense, okay? Stuff that you can touch and move. In the first 2 years of life, little kids, if they can't hold it and touch it, put it in their mouth and taste it, it's as if it doesn't exist to them. They are very self-centered. They are egocentric. They are only focused on the things that they can see and touch, okay? So here's an example. This little kid here, I don't know if you can tell or not, but he is trying to slide down this little bitty slide here on this toy. Okay, not very smart. Similarly, this kid is trying to get in this little car. They are egocentric, self-centered. They think that everything is about them, and the only things they can think about are things that they can touch and hold and interact with, okay? First year or 2 of life, they don't have language to discuss other things. It's just what they can touch and hold and grab onto, all right? In the second stage, all right, when kids start to get into preschool, kindergarten, these kids are now able to communicate. They don't have a great grasp on logic, so they could not operate on their own. They're not fully operational, right? They are pre-operational. They're before being able to operate on their own, but they start to be able to use language to discuss things that maybe they can't necessarily touch and taste at the moment, but that they know exist because of their limited interaction with the world, all right? This is the second stage of cognitive development, S, P. The third stage, C, is about concrete operations. These are kids who can now operate in the world, okay? They start to have logic, they start to be able to use reasoning to manipulate things in the real world, to understand how things work. Kids around this age love to take things apart and put them back together. And in this word concrete, it means things that you can see, observe, things that are tangible, things that make sense, okay? So up until like middle school age, kids are in the third stage. Starting toward the end of middle school and in high school and beyond, people are in what's called the formal operational. How convenient. The formal stage is the 4th stage, and it is when they can think about abstract, complex ideas of justice and fairness and equality and love and friendship and rights. And kids, starting in middle school, high school, they get really interested in these concepts, things that you can't necessarily see, but that you can think about and communicate about. It's the final, the 4th, the formal stage of thinking, okay? So Piaget said that as you progress through the stages, certain things happen. You're sort of moving your way up the cognitive steps or the cognitive ladder, okay? So some phrases I want you to write down. In the first stage, that is when little kids are starting to figure out object permanence, the idea that objects still exist even when you can't see them, okay? Playing peekaboo, right? Peekaboo only works when a kid has developed object permanence, right? When they know the thing still exists, even when they can't see it. That's developed in the first year or 2 of life. We talked about egocentrism. When kids think everything's about them, sometimes kids this age will have like an imaginary friend, right? Because they think that everything is about them, right? They can see this friend, they can think about this friend, no one else can. It doesn't matter to them because they're only thinking about themselves. In the third stage, put a star by this word. And conservation here is about how matter works. I'm going to show a video to y'all in class, and you may have seen some of these online, but like taking a glass of water from a tall, skinny glass and pouring it into a short, fat glass and being able to tell what's happening with the water. Taking a graham cracker and cutting it into 2 pieces and knowing that you still have the same amount of graham cracker, even if it's in 2 pieces. Conservation has to do with understanding how matter works. So I'll show you some videos explain this, but conservation of matter, they understand this in the concrete stage. They both start with C-O-N. Abstract reasoning is in the fourth stage. Hypotheticals, moral thinking. If I do this, what will the result be? Being able to use their imagination to predict the future, all of that happens in the fourth and formal stage. So this is his theory. From birth to 2 years old, SPCF, the 4 stages of Piaget's theory. All right. Now, we're going to shift and talk about a second cognitive theorist, a different person who had a different theory about how our thinking changes over time. So Piaget said, we go through these 4 stages. It just kind of happens as we experience the world. A guy named Vygotsky said something different. Okay, Vygotsky said that Piaget's theory was wrong. Vygotsky believed that in order to change our thinking, we need someone to show us the way. We need a guide. Okay, so off to the side, if you will.
Coaches, just a reminder that your coaches meeting will start in 1 minute at 11:45. You should have the Zoom link sent by Coach McDonald. If you don't have that link, please make sure that you email Coach McDonald and he will send that link to you. So coaches meeting will start at 11:45, which is 1 minute away. So guys, make sure you're on Zoom. Thanks.
Sorry about that. I call him Vygotsky, Guide Gotsky. He said that for you to develop your thinking, you need to sort of have someone helping you think differently, to gain new abilities, to gain new skills. Okay. So have you ever heard the expression to get outside of your comfort zone? That's Vygotsky's theory. He called it the zone of proximal development, or the zone of next development. So here's the idea here, this bullseye. There are some things that you can already do on your own. The middle of that circle says learner can do unaided, okay? Or things you can do already, all right? And then there's some stuff, this outer ring is stuff that you're never gonna be able to do, okay? Stuff that you're just not capable of because of human limitations or your physical limitations. You're just never gonna be able to do something, right? But Vygotsky said that there are some things that you can do with help, with a guide, with someone showing you and helping you, with a coach, a mentor leading the way. That's how Vygotsky said our thinking changes. And that's what the zone of next development, the zone of proximal development, it's the stuff that's just outside of your comfort zone. That's how you get better at things. So Vygotsky said that as your language improves, that your thinking will change because you can communicate with more people. They actually did this really interesting experiment where they had some kids do math problems quietly, and then they had some kids do math problems, and the kids were told to talk out loud about what you're doing as you're doing the math. And what they found was that this ability to have some inner speech and sort of explain things as you go, it actually helped those kids do math better, okay? So as you develop language, as you see other people doing things, that matters. I had this word modeling down. When have we talked about the word modeling? Having a model, being able to watch someone do something. Well, it was in Bandura's theory, and he's the third cognitive psychologist I want to talk about. Technically, Bandura, we said he's a behaviorist, right? He studied learning. He developed what's called social learning theory. Put a star by this. We talked about it before the break, observational learning. But the idea here is that we see models and we imitate them using what are called mirror neurons. They watch other people do behavior, and then our brain can do that same thing. So the Bobo doll experiment, okay, hopefully you've seen these videos. They're linked in this PowerPoint as well, which is on the eClassic, and you go back and watch them. But this whole idea is that kids will watch other people do something, and they will copy and do the same thing. Okay, they will imitate, they will mimic what those folks are doing. So Bandura's theory kind of goes along with Vygotsky's theory that we need other people around in order to develop our thinking. All right. If you don't mind, do this check for understanding, kind of covering all the stuff that we've talked about. Bring questions to class if you have questions. We will have a quiz over these things. Appreciate y'all. See you in class.